I'm here today to interview Fix-It about his Appalachian Trail hike of 2020. Maybe even ask him a few questions about last year's hike as well. So Fix-It, when did you start your hike this year? Yeah, I started this year hiking on May 23rd, I believe, in the Smokies at Fontana Dam, North Carolina, which is just right before the Smokies, just a mile before the Smokies or so. And you finished on what date? Then I ended on July 19th at Swatara Gap in Pennsylvania. And how many miles did you get in this year? Yeah, so this year I did a total of 859 miles. 426 of those miles were in my first segment where I started at Fontana Dam, which is just short of the Great Smoky Mountain National Park, and then taking my way all the way, finishing North Carolina, doing Tennessee, and then a big portion of the south part of Virginia. And then, so that was part of the 859. And then the second segment I did, just immediately after, right at the same time, was 433 additional miles. So that adds up to the 859. 433 miles in the northern part of Virginia, then West Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. And did about, not quite halfway through Pennsylvania this year. So 859 miles. Why did you split that into two separate sections? Well, I did two different sections this year because of what I did last year. So in 2019, I started at the southern terminus of the AT in Springer Mountain, Georgia, and I did all the way up to Fontana Dam, and then I had to get off the trail, and when I came back, I just did a section in the middle of Virginia, the Triple Crown section there, from Bland, Virginia to Buchanan, Virginia. And so this year when I came back, I started where I had first left off last year at Fontana Dam, North Carolina, and I went all the way up to where I started in Virginia last year in Bland, Virginia. So I just connected those. So now, so then I had done all the way through with no sections missing. Then, once I got done with that section this year, I just shuttled ahead to where I finished last year in Buchanan, Virginia, and just continued north. So when I finished this year at Swatara Gap, Pennsylvania, I now have no more sections that I'm missing in between. In the last, since March of 2019, I have now done the full section from Springer Mountain, Georgia, all the way up to Swatara Gap, Pennsylvania. I know that you started hiking the Appalachian Trail last year in 2019. What does that put your total mileage at now between the 2 years combined? Yeah, when you add up the miles that I did last year to the miles I did this year, again from all the way from Georgia up through mid-Pennsylvania, it adds up to 1,185 miles total that I've done on the AT. And the AT is 2,193 miles long, at least in 2020. So when I come back next year, I will have 1,008 miles that I have to do to complete my hike. Now, that's a little concerning to me because I didn't do 1,008 this summer. I only did 859. So if I want to finish this next year in 2021, I'll have to somehow figure out how to do roughly an extra 150 miles in probably about the same amount of time. So we'll see what happens. And how long were you on the trail this year? Yeah, this year I spent almost exactly 8 weeks on the trail. If you add up that time from May 23rd to July 19th, it's almost exactly 8 weeks. Of course, there were a handful of 0 days in there and things like that. But anyway, the overall amount of time was about 8 weeks. Now, in your early videos, you said that you were planning on being on the trail for 9 weeks this year, and you hope to do a minimum of 900 miles, getting through Pennsylvania possibly even doing as much as 1,000 or slightly more. What happened? Why did you miss that goal for this year? Yeah, through the whole season, I have been saying that I expected to do 900 miles and then, possibly even more than that, and maybe probably even more than that. And I didn't make it, obviously. I got 859. So, what happened is, my plan was to go through July 24th, and I left about a week early off of the trail this year to help a friend move. I just, I offered to fly down and help him, pack up and get everything together and move. So that cut off 6 days of hiking right there. Once I made the decision to do that, and I knew that I was going to be, not really going full bore and trying to get just as many miles as I could this year, affected my you could say motivation, but really I think it just affected my whole thought process. I just decided at that point the most important thing wasn't to do as many miles as possible. So I chose to slow down a bit. Instead of doing, 20 to 25 miles a day like I'd been doing the 3 weeks before that, I started doing more like 15 miles a day, stopping a little bit more in towns, taking just a little bit more time to enjoy my time in the towns. And so those two things combined really cut down on, the miles that I did in what would have been those last 2 weeks. Typically if I'm doing 15 miles a day, well, that's a little over 100 miles a week. And, if you add another 5 miles to that, right, 20 miles a day, you can see how that adds up as well. So by getting off a week early, I lost 100 miles, plus slowing down a little bit, I lost a little more than that. So, it's possible that I could have added 150 miles to my mileage this year. And if you add that all up, it's really close to 1,008 miles, which means next year, possibly, even though I'll be in, some tough country as far as hiking goes, it's possible I could get that 1,008 miles in, but I will really have to work hard at it. Did you notice any physical changes throughout the course of your AT hike this year? There were some decent changes in my body for sure over the course of the almost 2 months that I was out this year. The biggest thing I think noticeable was just the fact that I lost a ton of weight, which I think is pretty normal. If you're out on the trail and you're eating like you eat on the trail, and you're walking as many miles as you're hiking out there and carrying all the weight. So, I did not weigh myself the day that I left for the trail, and I didn't weigh myself the day that I got off the trail either. But I had weighed myself close to those times, and what I have kind of extrapolated from that is that I think the absolute least amount of weight that I lost was 18 pounds. And I'm not a huge guy, and I didn't have a ton of weight on me, so 18 pounds is pretty noticeable. It really got to the point where if I had lost much more weight, I really could not have probably even worn the shorts that I had been wearing. I had them cinched up so tight and wrapped over themselves that they weren't even really very functional. But anyway, so yeah, about 18 pounds. And then I started eating like crazy and probably gained 4 or 5 of those pounds back almost immediately, just within the first 4 or 5 days of eating like a pig and not really doing much. Probably one of the most concerning things, but not huge issue still, but was that early on, my left foot, the ball of my left foot and my big toe on the bottom started to get numb. Early on in my hiking, maybe after the first week or week and a half, maybe 2. And it really helped when I changed out of the first pair of shoes I had, and I went to the Ultra Lone Peak 3.5s. I stopped having as much of an issue, but I still had a little bit of an issue. And even now that I've been off the trail for a week, the bottom of my left big toe is numb. I can't really feel it. But I've heard other people on the trail say that same thing. And, you know, they say that, you know, you give it a couple of months and the feeling comes back and everything's good. So I'm expecting that to happen. And probably the best change I noticed, which again is one you would totally expect, is that when I started hiking in the Smokies, you know, my lung capacity and just my cardio was not there. And man, I was having to really just, you know, gasp for air, and like every single step I was taking, almost hyperventilating on purpose, just to get enough oxygen to keep myself going to maybe do a 15-mile day, and having a really tough time with that. And by the end, you know, I got to the point where, you know, I was running down hills, just hopping on rocks, from rock to rock, no problem. I was hiking up hills at 3+ miles an hour. I mean, up, you know, full mountain steep at 3+ miles an hour, which is typically more like my downhill speed. And of course, having to breathe and being tired, but not struggling with it, you know. As long as I just stay focused and try to be efficient with my movements, I could just hike like that all day, which is why I could do 25-mile-an-hour days by the end. So that's something I think to expect. You know, that probably happened for me, I think the first time I really noticed. Well, so I noticed probably two different time frames. I'd say about 3 weeks in, I started to notice I just wasn't struggling as much, you know? So I could just get through a normal day without just feeling like I was killing myself. But then, at about maybe 6 weeks, 5.5, 6 weeks, is when I noticed that I just turned into Superman for me. And all of a sudden, things just weren't as hard as they had been before at all. And I could do things that I had never been able to do before, as far as the longevity of hiking and all of that. So. And how did your AT hike end this year? And what did you do when you got off the trail? Yeah, the way my hike ended was I got off the trail at Swatara Gap, Pennsylvania, and shuttled to a hotel near the airport. Next day, took a flight out, flew down to my friend's, and helped him pack up, and then drove home. And it was about a 16-hour drive home. So, you know, plenty of time to reflect, think about things. And then got home and didn't do much for several days. Did a lot of sitting around and still eating and just, you know, kind of getting back to normal. Is there any message that you want to send to people that watch your videos? Well, it's a great question. You know, my YouTube channel is called Take It Day by Day. And, you know, that came up because it's just what I've realized in my life, not just with backpacking or even only with physical activities, but with things like building my house or, you know, working in various jobs that I've had, things like that, that really you can do about anything, you know? Things that you don't think you're qualified for, things that you maybe have no experience in. If you just make a plan and set an end goal, you know, so you know what it is you want to do. I want to hike the whole AT. How do I do that? I have no idea. I haven't even backpacked before, right? So, but I know what my goal is. So then start creating a plan. It doesn't have to be a perfect plan, and it doesn't have to be an entire plan, but it's a plan. It's something for you to follow so you do something every day. And, you know, if you get up every morning and say, okay, I want to hike the whole AT, what do I have to do? You're really going to be overwhelmed, and oftentimes that freezes people and you just never accomplish anything. But if you get up every day and just say, okay, I know I have this long-term goal, not putting any pressure on myself, but I want to do it. And what's the first thing I should do today? The very first thing, I don't know anything, what should I do? Hey, maybe I'll get on YouTube and look at some videos. Maybe I'll go down to my local outfitter and just start asking them, hey, what do you guys know about this? Tell me about some gear. Do you know anybody that has classes, you know? Maybe they'll look at you like you're stupid, and maybe they'll give you some great information. But you just took that first step, and then the next day you take another step. And maybe that step is doing something that you learned the first day, so that someone told you. Maybe the second step is that what you did the first day didn't work at all, so you're going to try something different. You know, now you're going to get online and look for a local hiking club, or you're going to go down to, you know, some hiking trails and talk to a ranger that's down there. Who knows what? But you're just coming up with something, and you are just taking it day by day. As soon as you accomplish that thing that you needed to accomplish, then you come up with a new plan, a new part of the plan, a new step in the plan. And you say, hey, I'm going to go on my first camping trip, or I'm going to go on my first overnight, hike and camp by myself, or whatever it is. And you just start doing it. And if you just take it day by day, and you don't take a whole bunch of days off, right? You keep your end goal in mind, and you just keep going, you will accomplish amazing things, more things than you think you can accomplish. You know, get out and do it, whatever it is that you want to do. What do you have planned now that you've completed your hike for this year and you're home? Well, one thing I've already started doing in my mind is starting to prepare to complete the AT as soon as possible. Probably that means waiting until next summer, but you know, I always have my eyes open and waiting for whatever opportunity comes my way, and just looking for the best plan and how to accomplish what I want to accomplish. So I'm already planning for that, to finish the AT as soon as I can, and I'll certainly keep you posted on that. Now, in the more immediate, I'm sure I'll be doing some smaller trips, just like I did last year. You might have seen some of my videos on the Washita Trail and some various other trails as well. They're all on the YouTube channel. But beyond doing trips, you know, I really will continue to do videos. I have lots of videos that I'd like to do. And those videos will cover lots of things. What I've learned just about backpacking, what I learned from my AT trip this year, gear, you know, just random gear videos, but also specifically how my gear worked on the AT this year, what I would change, what issues I had, what were big successes. Possibly maybe a video or more than one about some of the people I met, some of the impacts that they've had, and we'll have to see what directions those go. I definitely want to be in better shape when I start the AT on my next go around, whenever that is. So I may do some videos about training or staying in shape, things related to that as well. So I don't know, there are all sorts of things, many more even just than that I could be doing. Keep looking for things from me, though. I'm not gonna stop posting things just because I'm off the trail for the time being. Why did you want to hike the AT? Yeah, in the mid 80s, I saw an article in National Geographic about the Appalachian Trail and how it was, coming together and complete, and some of the changes, and the people who were now starting to hike on a regular basis, and all that stuff. And I couldn't believe it. I remember telling my mom, this is amazing. You can hike across the country like this, the whole, 14 states and this many miles, and I'm doing this someday. And yeah, that's just, I've always been a person that loved challenges ever since I was a little kid, and get excited about something and stick it in the back of my brain, and just, like I said earlier, just keep looking for the opportunity. Now, it was many years later, of course, before I got to do it, but when all of a sudden I was at the right point in my life, it was time to do it, and it was still in my head, and so, yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Well, thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. I can't wait to see what happens from this point forward. Wish you the best of luck next year. I hope to see you on top of Katahdin. Thank you for joining us. That